Hi, and welcome to Mentoring Functional Medicine Dual Diplomate Program. I'm Dr. Patrick Garrett. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite little side projects called the Dr. G's infamous one-line theory or one-line theory. And this is the concept that we'll use from time to time with clients, especially when they're kind of that martyr syndrome and they just find their breaking points easier and easier. And we're going to teach them how to stop that process through the one line theory. Ultimately, who am I to be speaking to you? So I'm Dr. Patrick Garrett. I finished chiropractic college early. I went to medical school, quit there 6 months from graduating to practice functional lifestyle medicine, and I'm the clinic director of several organizations, including the Genomic Wellness of Beverly Hills, which is a fully telehealth practice. I have 20 years of functional lifestyle medicine practice from functional medicine, clinical nutrition, integrated medicine, dual board certified health coach, and I have about a 90 to 95% success rate. So all this stuff that we teach you, this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And so we specialize in reversing the things that people tell you can't reverse, like, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, which are my favorites, and then eczema, psoriasis, anxiety, depression, asthma, allergies. Pretty much the worst cases. This is where we really shine at functional lifestyle medicine. Now, I have clients all around the world and patients all around. And, we've treated famous authors, Grammy winning singers, government leaders, and so on. The furthest anybody's ever really flown in to see me was South Korea and Saudi Arabia. And then I'm a national and international postgraduate speaker. Now, I've taught the 320-hour dual diplomate program in mentoring functional lifestyle medicine. I've also taught a 300-hour 2-year postdoctoral diplomate for functional medicine, clinical nutrition, and then I also teach a dual certification program for health coaches for functional lifestyle medicine. I've taught on the national platform for courses in internal disorders, functional medicine, functional lifestyle medicine, applied nutrition, clinical chemistry, clinical nutrition, functional laboratory interpretation, and functional approaches to reverse all kinds of diseases. And of course, I've been an international speaker and the keynote speaker at several symposiums from Mumbai, India to Bangkok, Thailand. Now, as I share throughout this program, my favorite postdoctoral education that I received was the ability to attend the Harvard Medical School's lifestyle medicine program. And that was the first program that really said patient has this condition, what are they doing to cause this condition? So it totally changed how we view disease and how we talk about fixing people with chronic disorders. Now, I'm also attended the postdoctoral education from the lifestyle medicine program at Yale University. Now it was more weight oriented, but it had really great insights within their modeling for lifestyle, counseling and coaching and medicine. And then additionally, I take about 100 continuing education hours every year, but I also attended the Yale Medical School's biomedical engineering coursework. And then I've attended the University of Melbourne School of Medicine's Epigenetic Controls of Genes coursework and annual dermatology review from Johns Hopkins, which has really helped to constantly keep all of those pictures in your mind so that way you can be a better port of entry of looking at people's skins and their pathological conditions and having better determination sometimes with that. Now, diplomate certifications, this is a short list, but diplomate of the American Board of Functional Medicine, diplomate of the the Chiropractic Board of Clinical Nutrition, the American Board of Clinical Nutrition, the American Board of Nutrition, and board certified in integrative medicine. I'm a fellow and a senior fellow with the American Academy of Functional Medicine, board certified through the American Board of Functional Medicine and Board of Nutrition. Certified Pro Rescuer, now that's inactive at this point, and then certified NIH investigator. So I attended the responsible conduct of research coursework. That's before you can get some NIH money like we did for our research that I'll talk about in just a second. And then, of course, 300 hours in internal diagnosis program, 64 in endocrinology certification, 36 in occupational health and applied ergonomics, which does not match any of the stuff that I've talked about so far. But 6 hours in dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness based substance abuse treatment. So, much like we treat food for abuse, it's the same thing. So, morphine in food and morphine in life, people want morphine. So, whether it's drugs or it's food, it's all the same thing when it comes to dialectical behavioral therapy. Now, I've also had the privilege of attending clinical clerkships all through my education, from manipulative medicine preceptorship, where I did 16 weeks at the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. But I've had over 700 hours in surgery, and I actually got to be the first assistant in surgery on several surgeries. So trained right under the chief of medicine of the hospital. Internal medicine, over 600 hours, and I trained under the assistant chief of medicine for the hospital. Family practice, over 500 hours, trained with a magna cum laude graduate. Psychiatry was my least favorite of all these, 400 hours, and I trained in a psychiatric hospital with board certified physicians. Pediatrics, this was the heartbreaking one. Trained under board certified pediatric endocrinologists and then board certified pediatric physicians. And then pediatric preceptorships at Cook's Children's Hospital. And then, of course, my chiropractic internship was over 600 hours and trained under board certified chiropractic physicians. Now, leadership and membership, again, this is an abbreviated list, but I'm part of Harvard Medical School's Postgraduate Association member. Association or American Association of Integrative Medicine, American Academy of Functional Medicine. I'm the chairman of the board of directors. For the American Academy of Functional Medicine, I'm also a fellow and then a senior fellow. American Board of Functional Medicine, I'm the chairman of the board of directors for them too. The American Board of Nutrition, I'm the chairman of the board of directors there too. I like to be the chairman if you haven't caught on. Integrative Nutrition and Herbal Medicine Association, I'm part of the advisory board committee and a member. Physicians Committee of Responsible Medicine, I'm a member of them. Blood ID, I'm the medical director. Green Med Info, I'm the board of directors and advisor. National Cleaning Challenge, medical director, and the list goes on and on. Now, I told you I did research, and I'm very excited and just, beyond myself for being able to be approved to be an NIH researcher and clinical investigator. We got our first grant for $15,000, and we partnered with KU Medical School, and we are studying proteogenomic psychiatry as we're looking at hard to treat patients for psych disorders. And of course, we're looking at that methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase mutation and the prevalence in depressed patients that really just kind of treatment didn't seem to work for. So that's a interesting and a really great research project that we started. And if you didn't know, I had a cooking show on TV for a few years on Channel 43. And then I've had my Dr. G show since 2016. And we have a YouTube channel for that. And other than that, we tend to have lots of media with TV shows and radio shows and all that additionally. So I look forward to educating you guys as we go forward. Now, this all started back when I was a kid and grown up with just moms and sisters. They were constantly getting abused and, treated like trash all the time and walked all over. And one day I was waiting for school, and on the news they had this segment about a new book that came out, How to Train Your Man Using Dog Train Techniques. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And everything on there that they talked about was amazing to me because, again, growing up with only women and getting them, kind of watching them break all the time, I was like, they all need to be listening to this. And so back in the 1960s, they actually had a movie called How to Train Your Man. But of course, that ain't going to work out because it's 1960s. Ain't nobody going to train no man. Now, that book is really great. I can't remember the name of it, but when I tried to look this up, oh my gosh, there is a innumerable amount of websites dedicated to this concept already. So basically, this is for men, children, and pets. Not that men are children or men are pets, but they're all inherently selfish. So women tend to be martyrs, and so this concept really should resonate with that martyr mom, the martyr wife, the martyr employee kind of syndrome that we see all the time. So, kind of working through this concept. So, the first thing is we really want to kind of maintain firm and consistent boundaries without escalating tolerance, right? I grew up with a mom that had no firm, consistent boundaries, which only escalated the tolerance all the time. So it just felt like chaos. It never felt like stable at all. And so then you just kind of watch people break over and over and over again with this. So the core premise of this is we want to start teaching and creating how to maintain psychological stability through maintaining your own self-respect, relational clarity, and all of this only improves once individuals define and consistently maintain those boundaries. So, it's always like, I guess in child psychology, they teach, kids crave stability. They crave boundaries. And the more and more that we try to be more flexible with it, we actually will just make things worse and we don't even realize what we're doing. So we want clear, defined, consistent, firm, maintenance of boundaries. So the key concepts or key components, just very clearly stated, limits. Like, this is what I'm willing to tolerate. Predictable enforcement that especially does not escalate. So, if you do this, this is what's going to happen, but always making sure that it's stuff you can actually enforce. My mom, I remember one time said, if I go to this party, I'll never see any of my friends again. And I'm like, well, that's not real, so I guess I'm going to the party. And then stable expectations, so not exploding, not escalating. Emotional neutrality, and that's the key thing of, especially as in a relationship, whether it's kids or work or spouse, really kind of finding that meh with it all, of that kind of who gives a shit, right? Of just, this is what I'm willing to accept, and it's okay that you have to suffer consequences because of that. And then non-escalating, which we've talked about a couple times already, but escalating is the craziest thing when you know that person has no boundaries. So the mom that you see in the store that's just like, I'm going to only count to 10. 1, 2, I'm not going to count any further. 3, 4, don't make me come up, none of that's real. There's no boundary there at all. If you have to keep escalating, or one of the worst things is when you create your boundary, you create that predictable enforcement, right? And they accept that. Well, you kind of lost that round. So you got to make sure that whatever your kind of enforcement is, whether it's carrots or sticks, that it is something that's worthy of it. Otherwise, you're going to lose. And sometimes you just have to chalk that up to just part of the fun of it, but don't keep escalating. If you keep escalating, it's not real to anyone. So, like, for example, my daughter would be like, we tell her go do the dishes, and be like, well, if you don't do the dishes, then we're going to take your laptop away. And then she'd be like, burn the laptop. And we're like, fine, then we're going to take your toys out of your room. And then it's like, burn all the toys. And then eventually, like, I'm losing and going down in flames with this whole situation. And they know it. So, the clinical relevance of all this are, again, boundaries, are boundary instability. Basically, you create codependency. And so then you enable behaviors, you actually reward the behavior, It's intermittent reinforcement cycles where sometimes you'll, sometimes you'll enforce these rules and sometimes you won't. Sometimes there'll be expectations. Sometimes there won't be expectations. Basically, just willy-nilly, I have no idea what I'm going to get from this situation. So it leads to a bunch of emotional exhaustion on everybody's part, but really, it just you lose your identity in relationships with this. Like, you're not an enforcer, you're not a rule maker, you're not stable. We're going to find your breaking point and exploit that like crazy, whether we know it or not. So, the healthy boundary part, obviously, right? I mean, boundaries are great. You need a boundary to keep your neighbor out of your yard. You need boundaries to keep your dog in your yard. So boundaries are behavioral, emotional, physical, psychological, and relational limits that define acceptable versus unacceptable consequence or conduct for other people. So you don't evolve to them. You clearly state what you are willing to accept. And then your healthy boundary statements, like you have to figure out what these mean to you. So I will not tolerate verbal abuse. So I watched a movie one time where I saw this kind of one line theory in place. And so the guy calls up the woman on the phone and he's verbally abusing her. And she says, "Hey, listen, you cannot tell me you love me and talk to me that same way. If you speak to me negatively again like this or verbally abusive, I'm going to hang up the phone." So, of course, she states her clear, defined boundary and her, again, acceptable consequence. But will a man typically accept that? No. So they don't have that acknowledgement of that one line. So they will push back and they will start talking or speaking with verbal abuse again, right? So then the woman hangs up, right? So she clearly stated if he did this, she was going to do this thing, and she did it. So it's great. So he calls back and is like, ring, ring, ring. Why, you little click. How dare you click? If you don't stop, click. And then eventually that guy, once he realizes that the boundaries don't move, he will call back and be like, "Hey, baby." So another one, a movie I saw, the husband would come home drunk all the time and always wake up everybody and stumble around. And she said, "Look, if you come home drunk again late at night, you're going to be locked out and you can sleep in your car." Now, she clearly stated that. Does that mean he's going to change? No. He's going to come home drunk again and challenge that line. And as long as she stays within that line with the acceptable consequence, it doesn't mean he will be any different. But he will know if he comes home drunk, he's going to sleep in the car. And sometimes that's acceptable to people. So you're not changing other people. You're only creating your acceptable consequences or conditions. So if you start yelling, "I'll leave this conversation," some of these you got to worry, not overlap over like, gaslighting and narcissism kind of behavior, but you really want to make sure that these are kind of authentic and vulnerable and transparent feelings and emotions and restrictions that you have. So I'm willing to help, but I'm not going to enable. So the things that you don't deal with outside your boundaries is other people's behavior, other people's opinions, their choices, their mistakes, their problems, their emotions. You only define what you can change. And the things you can change are your values, your feelings, your time, your energy, your body, your decisions. So healthy boundaries create this really healthy clinical distinction here. So they need to be very specific, observable, behavior focused, and enforceable. So again, not over the top kind of like aggressive comments or whatever that are ridiculous, but you just be very specific, very simple. One line is what we want to focus on. Now, unhealthy boundaries are always vague. emotionally reactive, right? So I don't quite, on the other side, know when or you're going to enforce these, when you're not going to enforce these. Do you have to blow up and explode before something is going to change? And this is really frustrating on the other side because not all people are trying to violate your boundaries. But if they're vague and emotionally reactive, like you just have no idea what's going to happen. So this is a critical piece here. Now, behavioral consistency is always our key. The effectiveness of the boundary is determined less by the intensity, but more by the consistency. So again, if I can't trust you with little things, I'm not going to trust you with big things. You should be able to identify and remain within someone's boundary for the little things, let alone the big things. But this isn't determined by how intense the reaction is, right? So we want behavioral consistency that's based on consistent lines and reactions, as opposed to amping up and just getting more and more, reactive to it. The behavioral psychology principle, intermittent enforcement. Basically, if you don't have a consistent line, there is no line. And so if you're intermittent on enforcing this, then nobody around you sees a line. They see, I can probably get away with it, and then once in a while you explode, and it's worth it to them, right? So this is where you occasionally tolerate disrespect, you repeatedly forgiving unchanged behaviors, and changing the consequences unpredictably, where you amp up or amp down. And so there is no clear defined goal here at all. So they just basically know if they persist, they can override your boundary, right? If I can just argue enough, make you frustrated enough, you will give up and you will give up that boundary. So emotional pressure always works. So again, with kids, you see this all the time. And then the consequences become negotiable, and then there is no line. We talked about the escalating tolerance, basically it's the boiled frog. And so this progressive expansion of tolerance, basically you just keep taking crap more and more and more. And as you fall apart and you get frustrated, everybody's willing to watch you fall apart. Nobody wants you to fall apart. Everybody wants you to be happy and healthy and balanced, but everybody else is selfish. And so this constantly becomes conflict, right? Abandonment of just, you feel like you make these decisions and then people just leave you for that. You have guilt and discomfort, social rejection. I mean, yeah, of course. So, common patterns that we want, or common patterns that you'll see. And this is part of the whole one line thing too, is you clearly can state your boundary. This is what I'm willing to accept. And then of course resistance occurs. Is that fair that you have to keep this line? No. But if you want to be happy, healthy, and balanced, you better figure this out. Now, as that resistance occurs, anxiety increases. And all this heightened tension starts to become apparent. And then the boundary weakens and toleration expands. And then eventually you find your breaking point. And then everybody just dismisses you because you're emotional. So you see this over and over and over again. And once you know this, it's obvious when you see it. So repeated tolerance escalations. Now she starts to resent him, the kids, the pets, emotional dysregulation. You feel like you're going crazy, almost gaslighting, and then you burn out, and then you learn this helplessness, right? That Skinner boxing. And then all of a sudden, that just becomes your new normal, to where nobody pays attention to you, nobody listens to you, everybody walks all over you, and you're walking on eggshells to try to somehow grasp this tiny little boundary that you have to have in your life. So, much like we talked about the difference of kind versus nice, we want assertive over aggressive. Now, I'm a child of the 90s. Man, they escalate to beating the crap out of you with uh, flip-flops and shoes and belts and power cords and switches off a tree, dowel rods. I mean, my parents or my dad, or actually my stepdad, he'd beat the crap out of us with dowel rods till our butts bled, and if he broke the dowel rod, he just, doubled up and he just kept beating the crap out of us. But then sometimes he didn't care. And so you just never knew whether you were going to be bloodied at the end of the day or doing what you're going to do. It was chaos, absolute chaos. So that wires people's brains differently, just so you know. And that's going to affect their behaviors, just so you know. So assertive is not aggressive, right? Years ago at the Wise Women ICT groups we used to do, we talked about words are powerful, and so we'd have words like bossy, and then you'd change it to assertive. So that way you're really communicating the way that you really feel like you're communicating and not being diminished by the type of words that people use. So we want to be assertive. Assertive is it's okay that you have an opinion and they don't agree and you still enforce that opinion. So direct communication, you're not being vague about this. Emotional regulation, you're not losing your crap as you're trying to explain this. And then behavioral clarity, this emotional intelligence that we want to get across. And then non-hostile enforcement. So if you're to the point you're beating the crap out of people or slapping people, you've lost. You have lost. And we've all been there. So don't think I'm all high and mighty here. I've had to learn all these same concepts myself. So non-hostile enforcement. So even if you do get a swat on the butt, it's not because you're angry. It's because you said, if you do not do this, you're going to get a swat on the butt. And that's okay, especially back in when I grew up in the 90s, And then assertive communication is always calm, very specific, consistent, not all over the place, and non-apologetic. You do not have to apologize for enforcing or having boundaries. It is okay that you have opinions on what you want. Now, aggressive communication, always punitive. And we've all been there, I'm sure, where you're just like, you're going to pay for crossing me kind of things. Emotionally explosive, you're just finding your breaking points all the time, and it's just chaos, and then it's very controlling and especially retaliatory. So that pretty much was my childhood, was all aggressive, very little assertive, and that meant nothing to me. You still just do whatever you want as long as you're willing to take the punishment and the constant griping and moaning and bitching about stuff. As long as you're willing to accept it, it's all great. So there's only one person losing, and that's typically the mom. It's typically the person who wants the boundary. So that then leads to avoidance, and then unclear expectations, suppressed resentment, inconsistent enforcement, and a whole dysfunction that takes years to fix in a family. So the one-line theory emphasizes assertive, consistent, rather than emotional escalation. Now, there's also the concept of self-respect in this and the self-differentiation, that you can be different and it's okay. So maintaining identity under pressure, you get to be the person you want to be even when there's chaos that you can't control. So you just always go back to the margins, you always go back to the boundaries, the reasonable expectations, and just know it's not always going to work. It's going to be okay. So you maintain your identity under pressure. You do not match energy with people. Well, if you're going to be bitchy, I'm going to be bitchy. Well, do you want to be bitchy? Right? So if they're violent, you're going to be violent. How about you just be who you really want to be, regardless of other people, regardless of the pressure change? So this is that core character identity with this. So self-differentiation is your ability to maintain your beliefs, value, and emotional regulation even when other people are violating your boundaries. And that's the nice versus kind stuff too. Now, individuals with weak differentiation, they just basically are like, well, I just absorb other people's emotions, right? Oh, I'm just an empathetic for everybody. No, you're getting beat up by everybody. So redefining values for approval. So I will be who you need me to be. I will change my values. I will change my boundaries based on, basically making everybody okay with it. So the fear of relational disconnect is definitely an issue, but it's okay. People do crave boundaries. And then the over accommodating dysfunction, of course, where it's just toxic as hell. It becomes like a gaslighting frenzy. Now, individuals with strong differentiation. I am different. I expect different. I want different. And I'm willing to have conversations about this. So they tolerate disagreements. You can be upset and upset with me over this boundary, but I'm okay with you being upset. And as long as you can be okay with them being upset, you get to be validated by yourself. And then you maintain internal standards. You're not flip-flopping based on conflict. You separate compassion from enabling. So you want to be able to be like, is this going to change them? If it's not, then I'm just enabling them. Preserve identity under relational stress, right? I'm the same mom, I'm the same wife, I'm the same husband, I'm the same child, no matter what the stress is. Now, that's not always going to be perfect, but that's our whole goal here, is to create more and more and more of that consistent character. Now, clinical relationship applications of this, everything, right? So, the people that really need this are the ones that have kind of been gaslighted into codependencies. People have workplace boundaries, are always apologizing for having feelings and thoughts, and constantly just trying to satisfy everybody at work versus being a happy, healthy, balanced person. Of course, parenting inconsistencies or parenting inconsistencies, that is where you see it the most out, in the public, where some of the spouse stuff is you only see in the house. But our critical piece of this is mommy martyr syndrome. And this is where I typically, either wife or mommy martyr syndrome, just kind of pause and let's talk about this one line theory. And then there's just this giant aha moment for everybody. I think the mommy martyr syndrome is killing women the fastest. So the psychological cost of boundary failures, I mean, that you see all day, every day in the office, just nonstop. And once you start seeing this, you'll see it everywhere too. But of course, they resent their kids. They resent themselves. They resent their parents. They resent everybody in this process because they're not getting what they want. And then emotional fatigue, if they just break down and find the breaking point, right? You can put a feather in the back of the truck over and over, and eventually you will throw a feather in there, and the truck axle will snap, and you found the breaking point. But man, moms and wives are finding their breaking point super fast. And then they become hyper vigilant because they're just like, well, I got to nip this in the bud as fast as possible because there's not clear boundaries and we don't know what's going to happen. And so then that's just exhausting all the time. Diminished self-worth because nobody respects me and nobody will respect my thoughts and feelings and emotions because I don't respect them. Of course, relationship instability, identity erosion's the killer. We always say that women by 35 are hormonally exhausted, but by 40, they eventually have their identity crisis, which is part of that identity erosion, right? I mean, you're just like, well, if I just say the right thing or do the right thing or escalate enough, like I will be this person. But you're not. You just become a martyr for everybody else. So it's time to get the identity back through that one-line theory. And of course, finding that breaking point faster and faster and faster. Now, the common cognitive distortions of this, the self-limiting, what we call shadow messages, right? If I enforce limits, I'm selfish. But self-care is never selfish. You got to rewrite these through the mantras. So peace requires accommodation. No, it doesn't. You require your peace with or without accommodating anybody else. We don't let people railroad us or run over us or bully us into what we'd say is more peace of the situation, but not peace of self. And then the best one is maybe this time will be different. Maybe if I just yelled louder, it would get better. And so I just need to tolerate more. Like, it's all self-blaming. And these are all distortions that just keep you in that box of despair. So, the one-line principle, compassion does not require surrendering your behavioral standards. Okay? You don't have to give in to be compassionate. You can be like 90s version, you stick the fork in the wall socket, you're going to learn yourself a lesson. And it's totally okay to let people learn their lessons. Your only goal is healthy, happy, and balanced. So, conclusion of all this is we want to have firm, clear boundaries. Maintain behavioral consistencies. They don't get a different version of me from day to day. And then avoid progressively expanding tolerance. I mean, again, you're going to have your moments. But why does the kid always push those limits when everybody's around? Because they know you'll be a different person. They know you're going to expand your tolerance when they're at the grocery store. But you are not a mom, you are not a dad until you drag your kid out of a store screaming, kicking, and crying, and then every other parent sitting in that grocery store is like, yeah, we've all been there. So they will always take advantage of situation to expand your tolerance. And then communicate assertively, not aggressively. Not I'm going to beat your ass. This is what I said. This is what's going to happen. And if you do that, this is going to actually happen. So, and then just know you're going to lose some of these situations. And then preserve self-respect under pressure. Don't become a different person. Keep who you are. Keep the core you, even when it's ugly. So, again, back to nice and kind, right? Kind versus nice. So a boundary that repeatedly moves is not a boundary. And your pets know it, your man knows it, and the kids know it. And you being upset and losing your shit is often totally worth not having to obey boundaries. So, are individuals that we coach, are they teaching others to respect their limits, or teaching others that persistence will eventually override those limits? So think about this. We are always teaching others how to treat us in these situations. So you just have to decide how you want to be treated. Now, all that being said, it's all fine and dandy. But what's this look like in real life, right? How do we kind of like teach the clients the one-line theory with this? So I always draw a line. So I talk about Um, they're always like, falling apart and just breaking all the time. Like, well, let's talk about one line theory, right? And I'm always asked if they've ever heard of it, and of course they haven't because I made it up. So I draw a little line and I draw a little hash mark, just like that. And I said, this is your expectations of what you're willing to accept from others, right? So it's clearly defined. You've told them a million times. Everybody knows it. And because you think everybody loves and respects you, that they're going to obey that line, you're going to be very unhappy in life, right? Men, dog, and children's jobs are to push past that line. That's where the dog training technique websites come in, because this is exactly how you teach a dog to obey the boundaries you want, and then you can just implement that for the coworkers, the boss, the husband or boyfriend, or the kids, right? You can use these same concepts to get what you want, which is one boundary, one line. So you clearly say that's your line. And of course, they keep pushing past you. And they keep pushing and pushing and pushing until the moment you explode. Now, you think the line is over here to the right. Everybody in that house knows your line's actually that one to the left. But the difference between what they know and what you think is you losing your freaking mind, constantly being pissed off and exploding and bitching and moaning and griping and complaining, and you will be dismissed as crazy. Oh, she's always emotional. Oh, she's always losing her shit. Oh, she's always freaking out. And the minute you freak out and you become emotional instead of assertive, you are now disqualified. So, same thing for men, same thing for women, but it's mostly a woman thing here that we see. So, the crazier you become, the more you explode, the more you don't have a line. Everybody knows you have two lines, and they will push and push because getting what they want is worth it. Now, I'm a good man. I'm a decent man. I'm very emotionally intelligent about this stuff. And I'm pretty sure I will still do this unknowingly. And I will push and just like, well, it's fine. You yell at me and I'm still not going to mow the yard or something. Like, it's fine. Like, it's worth it, right? The consequence is worth that. So your only job is to figure out your shit. Fix your stuff, regardless of everybody else. It's not fair that you have to be the one to keep pushing your line. But it's your line, girl. It's not mine. It's not anybody else's. And if you want what you want, you better fight for that. So, how do you get past all this? You just have one line. One line of what you are actually willing to tolerate that has very achievable repercussions, and they do not escalate if they're willing to accept the consequences. So, this is what I said, this is what I'm going to do, and I do the thing, and I consistently do that, no matter if it's in a crowded room, no matter whether it's church. You know, eventually, mom does not play. You know that your wife is not going to take your bullshit anymore. So, it's unfair, but it's your job to keep your healthy boundaries. And then you stop exploding and falling apart and all this stuff. So, our key concepts for this one line is firm, consistent boundaries that don't require escalating your tolerance when others resist them. Because of course they're going to resist them. Again, do not get caught up on whys. Why did they do that? No, because they're selfish, that's why, right? So it's unfair, but there is no why to this. It's just you getting what you want. So define these boundaries, and then what you will and won't accept. And then consistency. Also figure out your non-negotiables. So personal standards are limits that you are not repeatedly redefining. And then being very assertive, not aggressive. And then self-respect or self-differentiation of these are my values, these are my boundaries, and it's okay if other people do not like them. And then behavioral consistency. Be the same person regardless of others. Do not match energy. Because the minute your kids are like, well, I'm going to match your energy, and then you're matching their energy, and then everybody's just exhausting. How about you just be the healthy, happy person that has rules that you enforce? So that's our whole one-line theory. And now on the repercussions of this, right? So you want clearly conveyed outcomes to those that cross the line. Now, just know these are not systematic across the board repercussions. You're going to have to figure out carrots versus sticks. Now, with dog training technique, it's usually carrots. I mean, if a dog poops on the floor during the time you're at work and you come home and you find it, and then now you're screaming at this dog that doesn't know English and yelling about this poop that was like 4 hours ago, and like it's a whole thing that doesn't make any sense. So within dog training techniques, it's more carrots, more how do I make this happen? But there will be times you need sticks. And so just making sure that it's not kind of punitive, but it's actually helpful. So like even with my kids, my oldest one, she will burn the bridge down while she's on the bridge. If you say you're going to take something away, she will say burn it, donate it, I don't need it. So you're not going to win with sticks with that girl. So then you're like, well, when you get done with the dishes, then let me know so you can get the Wi-Fi password, or you can get the PlayStation, or you can get your laptop back, right? Find something that's probably going to be motivational, but also know still may not motivate her. So you might lose that round, but you just accept it, reevaluate, figure out how you're going to win next time. But with sticks, like my other daughters, like if I raise my voice, that is like punishment for them, you know? So figure out your carrots and sticks. But that's where we'll end. So your assignment is to be able to draw out and explain the one-line theory to your clients or patients, helping them understand these core principles. And I mean, for the most part, 99% of the time, I'm just drawing that last few pages for them. And everybody gets it. So you don't have to go into a dissertation of explaining why it's important necessarily. Most people get it. So it might be a great handout or something like that for them. All right. I hope you guys appreciated that. And this is a really simple but profound way to help clients create their own boundaries and be okay having boundaries. All right. Thank you guys.